30 seconds, and that was enough for me to just be completely scared out of mind.
Have your phone data too?
We have similar reports in Russia.
I must have watched it for about, a minute and a half.
A large something.
I couldn't explain what it was.
And that's when I saw the face peek out from behind the tree at me.
But ancient Native Americans have been recounting sightings for centuries. Sightings of creatures all the creek.
They ran into this people that they call the creek knoll.
Since the late 1950s, local and national newspapers have recounted eyewitness reports of 6 to 8 foot tall, hairy, man-like creatures roaming the mountains of Humboldt County in Northern California.
Where the crystal waters flow. No reason to consider company might show. But destiny would find you where you walked across the sand. Leave a world divided. Did Roger film a Bigfoot or man? Where are you now, Patty?
Well, welcome, folks. It's that time once again for the Friday evening Bigfoot Radio. And now for the Bigfoot research teams from across the country. Welcome, everyone. How is everyone doing tonight?
That's right. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Want to get a repeat here? What about my co-host? Let's see if he's got a repeat.
Repeat.
sounds like a bullfrog with laryngitis.
No, that would be repeat.
Whatever. Anyhow. How are you doing out there in East Coast?
Doing good, brother. Went out the other day, found some broken stuff. Can't 100% say it was Bigfoot related, but one of them was about 7 feet off the ground, so that kind of led me in that direction. Other things were like toward the ground, so
can I ask,
you don't know.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
How did Bigfoot get 7 feet off the ground?
He jumped.
Yeah, okay. Now who's snorting coke?
Well, you know what? If he's 9 foot tall, he had to bend his ass over.
Like I said, now who's snorting Pepsi?
So what's going on out there? You catch any midget Bigfoot shit?
Actually, nothing's been going on out here. The last time we had anything going on was 124 degrees, and I'll tell you what, no Bigfoot would be caught dead in this heat.
Now, wait a minute. You just said the last thing going on with Bigfoot was at 124 degrees.
That's right. And ain't no Bigfoot out here dumb enough to be in no 124 degree weather.
But apparently there was at the last Bigfoot thing you heard was at 124 degrees.
Whatever.
That's what you said.
Whatever.
Nah, come on. Get it right.
Yeah, whatever. Anyhow.
Yeah, we've been running between 95 and 100, and the feels like has been the highest feels like has been like 110.
And what was the humidity?
Way to hell up there.
Yeah,
it was hard to sit outside and breathe in it. And we didn't even have a breeze.
Yeah, I could see that. I could just see Jan out there sitting in a rocking chair, just a plain chair, with a diving suit mask on with air conditioning on the inside, saying, boy, this humidity, you can't breathe in it.
Yeah, okay, sitting up there with blue jeans on, a tank top on, and trying to breathe.
Yeah, I couldn't handle that.
Mary Catherine in Alabama got killed with storms the other day.
And that was in Bruton, Alabama.
You didn't get no rain there? Cause
we got rain, but that tropical storm caused a tornado to spin off in Bruton. And it wiped at East Bruton off the map, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, because I know when I watched it from down here when they were showing it, it was showing a big red spot going across most of Alabama, really.
Well, we have a lot of heavy flooding, but we're in such a high elevation here that we don't get flooded. If we get flooded, just go to Northport, be gone.
Yeah, and I want
to... Did you go out there to see if any Bigfoots needed rescued from all the flood?
No, I didn't have my rain boots on. I stayed in. The lightning's been pretty bad. It popped over the house and knocked our freezer out, and we lost a whole big freezer of food that I had put up in the garden.
You need to have at least 10 to 15 life preservers with about 30 or 40 foot rope so you can save these Bigfoots. I mean, they've been taking care of you. You got to take care of them.
Yeah, and on top of that, you're supposed to be building a root cellar. Those root cellars work a lot more better in a freezer.
Yeah, but they fill up with water quicker, too.
Yeah,
I do a lot of canning. I can a lot of my vegetables out of the garden, so it got like okra and some corn, cream style corn, and some other vegetables.
I want to put a shout out there to Adrian. Adrian, if you're out there, hello, and hope you're doing well in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank God I'm not in Phoenix, because if I was, I'd be sweating buckets of water.
Shit, I'd love to be out in Arizona right now.
What's going on in Arizona?
Nothing, but I was just told to make a holler and a hoot out there for an Adrian.
So that'll work. That's like my buddy here in the park. His name's Ray, and I hope he made it on tonight to listen to us.
You talking about Ray Stevens?
Yeah, right. Actually, my aunt knew Ray Stevens, and he used to come to her house a lot.
In Oklahoma?
No, in Georgia.
Actually, Ray Stevens and my father, being they were both blind, or what do you call it, eyesight impaired, they both went to the same school with each other.
Yeah.
I didn't know Ray Stevens. Oh wait. I'm talking about...
They might have an eye deficiency, but yeah, and she even do, oh, damn.
Oh, wait, now, I'm talking about Ray Stevens, the one that Squirrel went berserk in his first self-right.
Yeah.
He's got an eye imperative vision problem.
No, I just threw that in there.
Oh.
I was talking about Ray Charles.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Hey, there's a ray of sunshine out there right now.
Yeah, too. I bet there is.
I can't believe it.
Anyhow.
Skips my mind right now. What was the actor that played with Burt Reynolds? Oh, damn. Jerry Reed, thank you. Yeah, she knew Jerry Reed, too. I met him when he came to her house.
I met the Doobie Brothers.
Oh, you lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to catch their last concert they did and didn't work out.
Anyhow, we have Mitchell back with us again. Welcome again, Mitchell. We know you only have an hour of show left, so if you would like, you can start off from where you left off last week and get us all ahead in your research and your scientific proof of Bigfoot's being related to human.
That is cool.
Thank you very much for a second opportunity to just continue on a little bit.
Hey, Mitchell.
Greetings, everyone. So, can everybody hear me fine here on my connection?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. So, we probably don't need to go back over my biography. Let me just get a quick highlight. Spent some time in the military and have several graduate degrees. Also taught the first 4 college Bigfoot classes from 2013 through 2018, and have presented my forensic dental impression scientific research at numerous conferences, including the 2015 and 16 Sasquatch Summits, the 2016 International Bigfoot Conference, where I co-keynoted with Dr. Meldrum, and another conference, International Primal Peoples Conference, where I co-keynoted with Dr. Robert Alley. Probably the most important conference that I presented this material at was a doctoral level academic conference, which was the 69th Annual Anthropological Research Conference. And when we do scientific research at the doctoral level, I attended doctoral studies at the University of Calgary. The process is to conduct your research, frame it scientifically, document your research in several papers, and then present those papers and your findings or conclusions at high-level academic research conferences where governmental, academic, and tribal anthropologists and zoo archaeologists can then examine your findings and your conclusions to make sure that you applied academic scientific principles in your research data collection, as well as you can substantiate or support your conclusions. So in this case, let me give your readers a brief understanding of what we're going to be doing today. I've got about an hour and 15 minutes, and what I'd like to do is this. I'd like to talk to your listeners about scientific proof of Bigfoot as a hybrid hominin. And we've also, once we get through that fairly quickly, because we're going to be reviewing from last week, we've hear a lot about portals and potential Sasquatch moving through them. I've developed a series of other theories that, with scientific quantum-based research, energy, quantum mechanic research, that provides a theoretical justification and explanation of what a portal is, how it works, and how solids or light-based materials can travel through from this existence, or some people call dimension, to other parts of other dimensions. So when people talk about portals or skygates, there is scientific justification and theories that we've already been using for several decades that can easily explain how that is possible. So do you have any questions for me before I begin with the first part?
No, I'm good to go.
Okay.
Now you did also did one conference with Bob Gimlin, right?
That's correct. He's been pretty much at every major conference that I've spoke at. He actually introduced me at the 2016 Sasquatch Summit. I first met Bob Gimlin at a place called Bigfoot City, which is in central Washington State in the Cascades, back in 2013 on a BFRO expedition. Came out of the woods, had spent the night gathering material and research, soundings and recordings, and he was there at the base camp, and we had a chance to talk and exchange some notes. Very credible, very pleasant man, and I highly encourage everybody that has any doubts about his veracity to talk to him and get an understanding of what an upstanding and credible individual he is. Great guy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I watched his interview on YouTube the other night that he did, and you can definitely tell this man is 100% telling the truth. I mean, there was no stuttering. You know how when people are lying, they got to think real quick of what to say. Sure. And this didn't happen.
Right. The truth never changes. It's easy to remember.
Yes. And that man, he was there. I mean, he was right there, and he seen Patty. And I believe that 100,000%.
I think you're correct in that assessment, and I do believe that he did see it, and I have yet to see any credible effort to comprehensively explain away what we saw in the film. So we don't have a lot of time. So let me just briefly run through the scientific research. Remember, for your listeners, this is a review from last week. What I found was a series of bone stacks that had giant human teeth marks on them in 2013 and 2014. Two of my students who attended one of my first college-level Bigfoot courses found the second two stacks, and we treated both of these sites like crime scene investigation. So forensic scientists, we did a forensic pathologist investigation, which you would do with a crime scene. We called in multiple subject matter experts, including State Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Lewis County Coroner's Office, which is in Washington State, also consulted on the project, as well as Jeff Robinson, a investigator from BFRO. And after we had cataloged and classified all the information, we came up with two major areas of evidence. One were the manner of death for the deer and elk that had been killed, and also and then we classify that as behavioral evidence from those crime scenes. We call them crime scenes or forensic dental impression research collection points. We were able to collect different kinds of teeth marks and different kinds of disarticulation strategies or the disassembly of a corpse in a specific manner. That tells us a lot about what animal was responsible for those kills. Their skulls had been crushed in, and there was no scavenger activity on those corpses. They had their ribs broken off from the spinal column, which we found out later would take prehensile hands or human-type hands. They were not gnawed off, and that's one of the classification frameworks that we use to examine different bone stacks moving forward from 2013. So in a nutshell, we have behavioral evidence on one side, which is called ichnological and neo-ichnological evidence. This is a scientific theory that frames it. On the other hand, we have forensic biotic taphonomy, which means very simply dead animals and the degeneration process they go through, how they died. So two different types of information. On one side, we examined the dental impression or the tooth marks on those bones at all three sites, and we came to a number of startling conclusions with those. We actually had also behavioral evidence on the other side, including footprints that we were able to measure, as well as terrain analysis, the manner of death, the presence or absence of food and water as well. And we were able to come to some startling conclusions, as I mentioned. Some of the impressions, tooth impressions that we looked at were double arch molar impressions, which are very simply, if you had a hand and you put a rib bone in your mouth and you chewed on it with your back teeth, you would leave the side tooth impressions as you were chewing on those bones. During that process, you'd also leave premolar impressions. There's bumps on the back of your premolars. They're called cusps. If it was a higher level primate, a human type Homo sapien, or in my case, hybrid hominin, which is a classification from chimpanzees through our immediate human evolutionary chain, they would leave triangle premolar impressions. If it was a lower level primate like a Gigantopithecus or a ape, then they would have left round premolar impressions. In this case, they were clearly across all three sites triangular premolar impressions. So the only primate classification that can manage that, as I mentioned, which is a higher level humanoid or hominin. And so that put to rest immediately the Gigantopithecus black eye North American mountain gorilla that potentially had migrated across the North Sea land bridges between probably 100,000 to the last one was about 11,500 years ago. So we were able to move beyond that theory and start to flesh out the hybrid hominin theory, that this was a higher level primate or hominin.
Right.
We also found linear bone scoring marks, and microscopically we examined those and exhibited what we call Hertzian fractures. That allowed us to mathematically chart each tooth, whether it as it slid along a bone surface based upon its microscopic signature. That was enabled us to determine what type of animal it was and what individual tooth actually made those signature marks. We were able to, in our case, in all three sites, eliminate the possibilities of other animals in that ecosystem to include bear, cougar, wolverine, wolf, and our subject matter experts also concurred with us that it was some type of Homo sapien or Homo erectus at this point. The interesting part were the impressions, and the front tooth notches that had been chewed out of the bones were double the size of any normal or modern primate, which in our case would be Homo sapien, but they were indeed hybrid hominin. And so, which was, again, pointed exactly to a hybrid hominin theory as opposed to a other animal from that ecosystem or the Gigantopithecus theory. We were also able to chart what's called mamelons, which are when a child between 7 and 13 years old, Homo sapien, modern human child, begins to get its adult teeth. They have bumps on the front of its incisors or front teeth that helps it break through the gum lines. Those charts are classified in what's called a Fitzgerald classification system. In this case, we use the scientific theories around forensic dental reconstruction or even dental reconstruction for people that have teeth that are reconstructed. And our Department of Arizona University was our lab that we looked at as far as the modeling that allowed us to make the classification. So that allowed us to conclude that there was 3 different sized creatures, 2 adults and a juvenile, based upon the tooth size distribution and also the prevalence of mamelons. Again, we're looking at double the size for the front teeth and the back teeth as well. The maximum incisor range of the front tooth for a modern human is about 8.5 millimeters. These average about 19.303 millimeters, so again, double the size. From that information, that tooth size measurements, we were able to extrapolate or estimate the bite radius, which in a modern human is about 19.05 millimeters. In the case of our research, we got an average of 41.51 millimeters. That allowed us to scale up and measure the mouth of this creature, primarily the adults. That's what we did the scale up with. And again, we're looking at a measurement of a normal human being, Homo sapien, of 30.91 millimeters, and we had average millimeter range in these sites of 68.83. So again, you're looking at double the size teeth, double the size bite radius, and double the size mouth. We were also able to look at the shape, the geometric shape of the front teeth. So again, we're looking at hybrid hominin, not a lower level primate like Gigantopithecus, based on our current assessment of the data. A modern human being has what could be described easily as flat point front teeth, shovel type teeth. So a modern human being has flat point shovel teeth. A earlier version of human being, in our case Neanderthal, has what can be described as shovel-shaped front teeth that are twice as big. In our case, we were able to do a radial arc curvature measurement mathematically and determine that the teeth that we were looking at were double the size. They were still hybrid hominin, but they were Neanderthal front teeth. So this creature, or creatures in our case, had a radial arc curvature measurement of over double the curve, which demonstrated that they were archaic hybrid hominin teeth or Neanderthal front teeth, yet they were still twice as large. Okay, so we're looking at the several different mathematical and forensic dental impression signatures that proved without any doubt whatsoever that it was a hybrid hominin and it wasn't a lower level primate or a Gigantopithecus blacki. Now, if you look at, go ahead.
No, I was just let me jump in before we get way too far from it.
Sure.
We're pretty good ways from it now. But when Melba Ketchum did her study, and you know more about it than I do, but she said that it was a human hybrid and that it came into existence 15,000 years ago. So what's your thoughts on that?
I'm familiar with Melba's work. She's one of the first people that posted one of my scientific papers on her site. We both agree that it's a hybrid hominin or hybrid human type creature. Where we differ is where it came into existence. My theory is that based upon my information, my research, that we had a common ancestor sometime in the past before that. I'm not sure. The evidence suggests to me forensically that this creature had been interbreeding with archaic versions of human beings, including Neanderthal, and that's why we saw a genetic snapshot of the front teeth, which were Neanderthal, shovel-shaped incisors, they're called, and that is how they identify Neanderthal skull features and forensic dental fossilization, is exactly by the radial arc curvature of the surviving front teeth. So we line up pretty closely on our assessments, mine from the dental side and hers from the DNA side. The only light between our positions is exactly when this creature came into being and how so.
Unmuted.
Go back a little bit further than she does with the genetic information. And I'm sure there's explanations for that. So there's not a lot of daylight between our positions.
Right. And what I wanted to say before we get into the deal here, each person that wants to ask our guest a question, for each person you have 5 minutes. That way it keeps the confusion down. It keeps everybody, together and everything else. And you know what I'm saying. So if anybody out there has a question they want to ask Mitchell, I'll unmute, but you all have 5 minutes apiece. No interruptions, please. That includes myself as well.
Okay, and I'm here to answer questions from anybody, including your listeners. And so we also had what could be described as Bigfoot footprints that we're also able to examine, including the step and stride lengths between these footprints. We were able to cast several footprints that were 16 inches long with 7 inches across the ball and 4.5 inches across the heel, and they were 3/4 of an inch deep. We measured a step and stride length of 72 inches with the step, and the stride was heel to heel of 144 inches. So your average stride length for a male is 62 inches, and for a female is 59.96. So what we're looking at, the step length is 31.1 and the stride length is 62. So we're looking at, again, double the size step and stride length. So this is an important aspect that we need to keep in mind, is that we're looking at double the size step and stride length based on the distribution of the footprints, and also double the size teeth, double the size mouth, and the presence of 3 different size organisms that were all conclusively proven to be hybrid hominin or higher level human type of an organism. Some of the other interesting information was, if you look at what's called rib peeling, it is another way to separate different types of bone structures, or what could be described as collection points for different bones. The first problem you have in the record of antiquity is, how do you separate canine or other predators and scavengers from human teeth marks? That's called equifinity. We were able to do that in this case because they were pristine marks with hardly any scavenger marks. One had a few small weasel impressions. We still had red meat attached to most of the bones, and we were able to date the kills between 6 and 8 weeks at the maximum based upon the density and examination of the bones themselves and their disintegration process. So we had fresh kills, fresh meat, little to no scavenger activity. So we were able to clearly chart the different tooth mark signatures microscopically and also mathematically and geometrically. So if you put that information together, what you're looking at as far as the bone, the tooth mark information. Now, each one of those pieces of information that I just described to you is independent and they're mutually supporting. So if there would have been something out of the ordinary, it would have stuck out and we would have had to deal with that. But in this case, they were all evidence of a human hominin, hybrid hominin's dentition or teeth. If you look at what's called rib peeling, and here's where the hands come in. It takes hands in order to snap off ribs from a spinal column. When an animal is killed and it starts to disintegrate on its own, it collapses in on itself. If it's scavenged by a predator or a scavenger, they're gnawed off or chewed off. They're not snapped off, the vertebra. If you look at, and that takes hands, prehensile hands, one hand in order to hang on to the spinal column and another hand in order to apply force to the edge of the rib bone to snap it off. And so again, you're looking at the presence of hands along with the presence of higher level, double the size human type teeth, including Neanderthal double the size front teeth. The most important piece of this information is all those individual signatures that I mentioned of tooth impressions have to be in the right position on the bones. If they're spread out all over the place in a organized fashion, then it creates another problem for us. In this case, the tooth mark signatures were exactly where they were supposed to be based upon our examination and application of the current scientific research. So remember, this is important for your listeners to understand. I don't want them to take my word for it. We cross-compared this data with the world's foremost authorities on forensic dental impression research that are peer-reviewed and already published in the major world-class archaeological journals. And I also submitted this research to the Journal of Archaeological Sciences /reports, which is one of the top anthropological journals in the world as well. And I had those scientists that had written those previous papers, they do our examination. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. And so at this point, we're still in final review for publication. So again, if you put all the information together, in this case, the behavioral information, the track information, the individual tooth mark signatures, and where those tooth marks were found, the hemispheres on the bone where they were found. Well, we end up what's called rib peeling, and there's 3 different types of it, and only humans or higher level Homo sapiens are engaged in that kind of behavior, which takes prehensile hands, and it has to be put in a mouth in a certain direction, and it has to be chewed up with specific type of teeth, hybrid hominin teeth. So the information is very conclusive, it's easily repeatable, and it's available for examination for any scientist. We've sent it to over 50 PhDs, and we haven't come back with not one discrepancy in any of our findings whatsoever. The information is available for anybody who wants to look at it. One of my college class final capstone lectures was captured by one of my students. It's on YouTube. It's called Mitchell Townsend, Bones and Stones. And you can see me give that lecture in a college classroom. If you want to read the individual scientific papers, there's a book that I published on Amazon. It's called Bigfoot Solved, Mitchell Townsend. Proving the existence of Bigfoot with forensic dental impression research. That's a compilation of all 3 of my scientific papers, and it gives you all that information. So that is the forensic dental impression side. So what we're looking at is, and I'll just give you a synopsis of a comparison side by side with the regular modern Homo sapien individual or a modern human being. So you have an understanding of what you're looking at. It's important when we do specific, individual examination to pull it all together and give you a step-by-step comparison between what this profile was of this individual, these three individuals, and what a modern human is. So a modern human averages about 5'9". If you took the step and stride length and the footprint length, and you times the footprint length by 6.1 and divided it by 12 inches per foot, we came up with a height of 8.8 feet. We had the same kind of teeth, the same kind of mouth, but we had double the size teeth, and we had Neanderthal front teeth, and again, proved conclusively that this was a hybrid hominin and not a lower-level primate or Gigantopithecus based upon the use of hands, based upon its premolar signature impressions, which were triangular versus round. We had a footprint of 16 inches by 7 by 45. A modern human foot is 10.76 inches by 3.6. So we're looking at a 43% roughly length to width ratio. A modern human being has more of a long distance runner type foot, the morphology of the foot, which is about 33%. The step and stride length were amazing. The step of a modern human Homo sapien is 31.10 inches, 31.10 inches. In our case, it was 72 inches. The stride length was 62.2 inches. The stride length of what we examined was 144 inches. We're also looking at bone peeling, double arches, impressions, triangular, molar impressions, premolar impressions, linear scoring. We had mamelons to prove juvenile, shovel-shaped Neanderthal type incisors and bones. And we also had a behavioral manifestation called bone stacking. So for any of your listeners and researchers out there, if you come across a series of bones that have been snapped off the vertebrae and stacked up in a pyramid or some kind of display, you're most likely looking at a Bigfoot kill and consumption site. So again, the evidence conclusively and scientifically, without any doubt, proves that in our case, the three different sites that we examined were all higher level hybrid hominin or human type creature.
Okay, anybody out there? 5 minutes apiece. Ask your questions. I got my mouth full of toothpaste.
I just got one question. Going back to last week, give me how y'all do the footprints and figure the size of the creature again.
Okay, so if you take a footprint, in our case, it was 16 inches. All right, so you take 16 inches, you times that by 6.6, and that gives you, in our case, 105.6, and you divide it by 12, and you get approximately 8.8 feet tall. So if you look at a 24-inch, for example, a 24-inch print, you can multiply that by 6.6. It gives you a figure of 158.4. You divide that by 12, and that gives you a 13.2 foot tall individual.
Okay.
And remember, and it's a lot harder to estimate weight because of the different material that it's standing on, whether it was running, whether it was moist, what type of material. Was it gravel? Was it packed rock? Was it skid road? Was it forest stuff? But we can state conclusively how tall these creatures was. And remember, these are hominin or higher level human type mathematics. So because we have conclusively proven that this is a hybrid hominin, we can use the same types of formulas to determine its height. So again, it's footprint length times 6.6 divided by 12, and that'll give you the size of the creature that made the footprint that you're examining and casting.
Okay, now...
Right, okay, yeah, it was... I know in North Georgia when we found the 21 and a half inch print, it was, this was so perfect. You couldn't have got any more perfect than putting your foot in clay.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 to 4 inches deep. So I'm imagining he was had some weight on him.
If you look at an average gorilla, silverback gorilla, that comes in probably about, and so if you're looking at the body type as opposed to its genetics or its tooth structure, we're looking at, from the observations of these creatures, they have a weight to height distribution ratio that's probably double the size to triple the size of a regular human being based on the thickness of its body. And there's a series of theories called Barron's theory, and the reason it has that is because it allows it naturally to gain more energy out of its caloric intake. So very simply, your larger animals, specifically in North America or up in the higher latitudes, like up in Alaska, you see a much larger span of animals, including polar bears, brown bears, elk, moose, etc., as opposed to the farther south you get, even down in the jungle. You're not seeing the size of these animals, and a lot of it has to do with its ability to stay warm and efficiently process calories.
Right. Christopher, do you have a question? 5 minutes.
Yeah, Matthew, I had a little question. You spoke about 3 different, kill sites that were, of a major significance, importance. Of those 3 kill sites, did you, is there any kind of similarity between the 3 of them, as far as like terrain, geography, water sources, etc.?
Absolutely. That's a great question. They were all very, very similar as far as presence of foods, including berries, cross-section of game trails, the presence and availability of water, which was within 100 yards of all 3 sites. Also, the elevation was between 2,900 and 3,900 feet elevation on all 3 sites. If you look, and as I mentioned last week, I had spent a lot of time in the military, in the infantry. I went to officer candidate school, and also did my last tour with the Green Berets, Special Forces, as an instructor. And the first thing we always notice is the terrain. Is this a good ambush site? Is this a good defensive perimeter, etc.? And all 3 terrain analyses that we did demonstrated a pinch point kill site or a funneling feature where there was natural terrain that funneled specifically into a smaller and smaller throat that would allow for a group hunt or an ambush, and much easier ambush.
Wow, that's amazing, fascinating that they all kind of were in that same, similarity of resources and geography, elevation. It's fascinating.
It's very interesting because it parallels archaic human beings and their hunting strategies, their group hunting strategies. So again, that's another piece of information that we're looking at a higher level human type organism or a hybrid hominin as opposed to a lower level primate. One of the things I did want to mention is one of the subject matter experts that we contacted was Dr. Craig Sanford from the from Stanford University. He's probably the premier primatologist in the world. He also examined some of the data and concluded that primates, including chimps and gorillas, don't bone stack. They don't have the same type of tooth dental impression analysis structures and signatures that we looked at. They don't eat a lot of meat. They do on occasion, but they primarily they do group hunt, but they don't generally use terrain features as pinch point kill sites. Right. So again, across the board of the information, you're looking at not only modern information, but also archaic versions of ourselves going back in history and in fossilized records of the exact same types of behaviors, hunting strategies, corpse selection, prey selection, the use of ribs, and the surviving of those types of information and tooth analysis, impression analysis on ribs. So if you look at a flat bone, it's absolutely the best area for teeth marks to survive, both in the wild naturally nowadays as well as in the past. So it all lined up.
Okay.
Were those stacks of bones, were they close to a trail, or were you guys off the trail, or were you tracking when you were looking, were you on a track when you found them?
The first setters that I found was off the track. There was no trail that went up to it's called Dead Man's Lake and Deep Lake. There's no trail. You just have to walk up through the bush. The other two areas, there weren't trails there either, but they were close to game trails. So again, these organisms were tracking game through their own game trails in what we call animal highways in the forest. And they set up in areas where the terrain funneled those animal highways down to narrow throats. So they would have a much higher chance of actually making a kill.
How about you? Wow. How about you, Anthony? Any questions? 5 minutes.
Actually, I don't have any questions, but I am impressed with the amount of research and intricate finds, with especially with the tooth and how it's able to determine the size, and definitely, like he was mentioning earlier, bigger than a human size, and so. So it's I think it's important that he shares what he's doing, because it's getting down to a pretty deep scientific level that this is something that is real and it is not fake. It exists. And the amount of research, the physical evidence that of what he's finding and sharing in on this show and other conferences that he's been to, I think it's really important and highly educational for us. And I'd say thank you very much.
My pleasure. I think the most important thing is that there's a lot of different types of information that's available, including the DNA, the footprint evidence, the behavioral evidence, the different tooth mark evidence, and what we're looking at is the establishment of what we call a maturation or a profile. And so the physical aspect of evidence at the college level over 8-week courses, and presented all of the different types of information from DNA to behavioral evidence to photographic, videographic evidence. And they're all saying the same thing, that there's something out there and that it's not really ape-like in its behavior, in its hunting strategies, in its biological and morphological makeup. It may have some similarities, and that's fine, but according to when we get right down to the nitty-gritty scientific research, the DNA and also the forensic dental impression research and the footprint morphology, you're looking at a higher level hybrid hominin. Yeah. And that's the only theory that can explain all of the information that we've collected. So you're looking at a profile of a real creature that the natives in this continent and pretty much every continent in the world have known about for tens of thousands of years. And I hate to say it, but ethnic Europeans are kind of late to the show here. The natives have known about this creature for tens of thousands of years, and modern science unfortunately has a problem examining this because of the stigma attached to the research. That's one of the reasons that I did the research with modern scientific principles and took this to large academic research conferences, because I wanted to give mainstream science a doorway, a safe doorway to walk through based upon their structures, their techniques, their vocabulary, and going to their conferences so they could take a look at what I'm doing and maybe move on beyond what I'm doing and maybe devote some type of significant scientific and mainstream scientific resources towards not only solving this, because we've proven that it exists, and we've also proven what its evolutionary lineage is. It's not a lower level primate. Not only does it exist, it's not a lower level primate, it's a higher level hybrid hominin, and that is indicative of its cultural, behavioral aspects, the fact that it has young, it has to breed, it has to eat, it has to communicate, it has to procreate, and it has to find food. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want to get another grainy picture or video or just cast footprints. I wanted something that was hard science, hard forensic science, that was repeatable, that was provable, and that was such a high degree of scientific intricacy that it couldn't be just described away as somebody's fantasy or a footprint that somebody could try to explain away. And so that's really why we're here and why we did what we did, in order to open the door and push the ball down the field a little bit more, because there's room for everybody. And if people would just share their research like we're doing here, then at some point in the future, we could really begin to understand what it is culturally that we're looking at and what types of cultural practices and language structures that it's using, and move beyond simple speculation.
Right. Let's take a
Great question.
Let's take a radio break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that the wrong mattress protector can ruin the feel of your mattress? Hi, I'm a mom. One of the hardest jobs out there. This is Junior. Junior's a sweetheart, but he can wreak havoc on our mattresses. Which is why I got the purple mattress protector. Nobody likes sleeping on a plastic bag. Other protectors turn your bed crinkly or stiff, and they make your mattress noisy, hot, and uncomfortable, like a Nickelback concert, or the first year of my marriage. A mattress protector that ruins the feel of your mattress makes about as much sense as my husband's conspiracy theories. The purple protector is stretchy, so it lets your bed do what it was designed to do. The purple protector enhances your purple bed, or any bed. It's soft and flexible, so it doesn't take away from the supporting power of your mattress. It cradles your pressure points when you lay down, instead of making your mattress hard and uncomfortable, like watching Transformers 4 through the window of an RV. And the stretchiness means it's super durable, which is nice because Junior has vivid night terrors about deforestation. With other protectors, I always felt like I was choosing between comfort and protection. I shouldn't have to make that choice. I need to protect my mattresses. They're a big investment, especially on my husband's salary. With purple, I don't have to choose. It's stretchy, which means it's comfy, and it protects my mattresses, which is a huge relief. And as any parent knows, the most important part of a mattress protector is protecting against stains and moisture. My little guy's pretty good when he's awake, but nighttime is a toss-up, and that's okay. Accidents happen. No more mystery stains on your nice mattress. The purple protector is waterproof and water absorbent, which will keep your mattress dry and clean. It protects the top and the sides of your mattress, so no matter what spills or leaks out of your family members, you'll know your mattress and your warranty are safe. It's stain resistant, so I can just throw the protector in the wash and it's good as new. I wish I could do that to my husband. It's hypoallergenic and non-toxic, and it's resistant to dust mites, which can be a problem in the forest. It's cool and breathable, which means no more waking up sweaty and damp like a Wookiee's armpit. I even have one on my bed. It's so comfy, I can forget it's even there. So when Junior gets scared and joins me in bed, I can rest easy knowing my mattress is protected. It even comes with its own 10-year warranty. What a sweetie. Being a mom can be so fulfilling, and the Purple Protector gives me one less thing to worry about. If you or your little monster sleep, click now to protect your mattress. Order your stretchy, soft, waterproof, stain-resistant Purple Protector today. You'd better believe it's real.
And we're back. So,
Great.
Anybody else have any questions out there? And remember, 5 minutes apiece for each individual. That way we keep the monotony down, if you know what I'm saying.
Mary Catherine, you got any questions?
Actually, she fell off. She said something about she had to go finish her laundry.
Oh, okay. Well, laundry is more important than Bigfoot.
Only when you're putting a sheet over your head with two eye holes, and then we know something's up.
Right. What about it, Snake Man? You got something to ask?
He was on.
Well, he went to sleep, I guess. He's pulling an Anthony.
He's on there.
Yeah, I know. I heard him come in.
Hey, Buffalo, are you there?
Ask Jack, maybe.
Somebody to eat.
Oh well, back to going.
Yep. So,
Let's if you don't mind, let's get into the dog man a little bit.
All right.
Are you asking me what my thoughts are on Dogman?
Well, sure. I mean, I didn't, back in 2011, 2012, and I told Steve this many a time.
He doesn't believe in the dog man. He thought it was demonistic.
Well, I didn't believe in it, and I thought people were smoking that wacky-backy. And we went to Standing Stone State Park in Tennessee in 2013. Well, no, 2011, I'm sorry. And I got good pictures of two dog men. We actually watched 6 of them for over an hour. And one would, at about 60 yards, one would come out of the brush and squat down and would look around, and it would watch us for 15, 20 minutes, and it would get up and walk off. And then another one would come out that was a different color. And this went on for over an hour. But these guys had to be, I would guess at 60 yards, they had to be 8 foot tall, easy. And they were real lanky looking. But they didn't have the huge feet. When we went back and checked, they had the Bigfoot type feet. So, what's your thought on that?
Why do you call them Dogman? Let me ask you one question before I start. Is based upon their facial structures, what their face looked like, because they're lankier? Did he get down on all fours and run like a dog, or what?
No, it walked like we do. And in the picture I have, you can very easily see pointed ears. You can see an eyeball. You can see the snout itself. Stephen's seen the picture. You can see the arm going to the ground, and you can see where his knees are bent up in front of him. I'll be more than happy to send it to you.
Sure. So the reason I ask you to describe it for the audience is because if you look at the evidence of Sasquatch, for example, as maybe a relative of a dogman, like you mentioned, the feet looked more Bigfoot-like than anything else, then what you're potentially looking at is a version of a Bigfoot or an adapted type of a body structure. And I'll give you something to contemplate real quickly.
Now, could it be interbreeding?
Well. Go ahead.
Oh, could it be interbreeding?
Very well, possibly could. Or the difference between us and Sasquatch is that we've had a common ancestor and that we've had a parallel evolutionary development. So maybe Dogman has a common ancestor with Sasquatch or human beings. So let me give you just something to think about for a second. If you look around in a room full of people, we're all the same species, Homo sapien, but we all look differently. We all have different sizes, different hair colors, different facial structures based upon our evolutionary genetics, our line, our family, a familial line. We all have different size feet, different weights, different eye colors.
Right.
But there's some things that are very common, and that's our genetics, our intelligence factors, our consumption of food, and our biological processes in our body. So I've seen pictures of what people describe as a dog man, and I made the same observations about the more lanky, similar foot structures as Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I call them the old ones, and different facial structures. So if you look at some of the Hoopa Project from David Paulides, some of his early books, you look at some of the forensic sketches, his artist, and based upon eyewitness testimony, has depicted different types of facial structures, from more human-like to more ape-like to more cat-like to more dog-like or wolf-like. And so I think what we're looking at here is another variation of humanity. And there's been different versions of humans walking the earth at the same time, from Neanderthal to Decennovian to Homo sapien and Homo erectus. So it's not just one line died out or 3 or 4 lines died out and all we have left is one line. I don't think that that's the way it worked. I think that we have multiple lines existing at the same time, and then over a period of time they were bred out or absorbed by interbreeding into the gene pool.
Okay, so I don't know. I've always kind of looked at it that if you had inbreeding in one group and you had inbreeding in another group, and let's say the dog man came out of this inbreeding, and this is a hypothesis. If the two got together, a male and a female, would that not start a different species?
No, it wouldn't start a different species. It wouldn't start a different species because we're all from the same species. What it would start is a different adaptation. For example, the difference between Norwegians and Eskimos. They're both Homo sapiens, but they're very, very different. Even they have different types of bodies and different processes in their bodies that have allowed them to live in their environments, yet they look very, very differently. And so we're not looking at an evolution or a species split. You're looking at an adaptation or a hybridization. And we know now that hybridization is really common in the animal kingdom. That's why you have 300 different types of cats, multiple different types of primate, different kinds of deer, elk, multiple different types of bear. That's not evolution. Classically, what is that? Is adaptation based upon food source and climate that those creatures live in. And so, in my opinion, what we're probably looking at is an adaptation. Now, if Sasquatch is a hybrid hominin, and we know for a fact that it had Neanderthal front teeth, so it had to have interbred with old versions of humanity or early versions of humanity successfully. They had offspring. And what we saw in 2013 and 14 was a snapshot of that family line. And if they're very close in species, which Dr. Ketchum's DNA clearly suggests, is that they were successfully interbreeding up until recently. The only other modern human being that has shovel-shaped incisors was Native Americans up until about 200 years ago. Yeah. And that fits with the stories of capture, kidnapping, and interbreeding with between Sasquatch and Native American females or males successfully. There's been several documented cases, especially in the Yakima Nation, Washington State, Eastern Washington, of successful breeding. And so, it points to a common ancestor that allowed us to split off in different lines, but still genetically close enough to successfully breed. and create another version of the same species, but not a separate version, and that's called hybridization.
Okay. Now, that makes sense. That does. It makes total sense.
Right. I think you're going to see other types of them out, too. It's not just Dogman and classical Sasquatch. You're going to see other versions that are in between, some more human-like, some more lower-level primate facial structures, some more Dogman-type facial structures. You're going to see different colored eyes, different colored hair, different colored body structures.
Right.
And very small variations in the footprint structures as well.
Yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, I've had people, and we've had them on the show. Stephen knows, that said they saw the Dogman and that it had hooved feet. And I've always said it like this: if you saw something like that with hooved feet, you need to go the other direction, because that's of Satan. That's not of this world.
I think.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I think Chris wanted to ask something. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to ask, I remember you were saying, when back to those kill sites, you had several different entities accompany you there. Can you tell me which those entities were again? You said Fish and Game, or what was it?
We had the Washington State Department of Fish and Game. His name was Richard Bousselet. He was the primary biologist that ran the bear and cougar program at Karelian bear dog, and what he was a biologist that took Karelian bear dogs out, and he used these dogs to scare cougar and bear away from places where human beings would be, in order to keep the interaction between cougar and bear and human being down to a minimum, so they wouldn't have to go in and then kill problem animals. He examined, and he's seen a lot of kill sites, and he examined them, and he said very specifically, and I quote, "You've examined and cross-referenced a lot of organisms from that ecosystem, and what my interpretation is this is Homo sapien behavior. And there's one thing I want to say is I didn't tell him it was a Bigfoot site. I told him, here's the bones, here's the behavior, you tell me what it is." And so again, he, through his degrees in biology and his 30 years experience with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, determined that this wasn't information or exhibition of kill, teeth, and behavior from any of the other animals in that ecosystem, and that it was site of some type of higher level Homo sapien, which in his case, not knowing that we were looking at Bigfoot evidence. Another one was the Lewis County Coroner's Office, the forensic pathologist at the Lewis County Coroner's Office. He's still there at this point. He's still the coroner. We thought what we might have found were some finger bones, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't looking at a crime site. And so I showed him some pictures, and they ended up being the bones from the hoof sheaths of some of these deer, and they look like fingers. We also had a couple bear fingers that were at the bottom of the pile as well, and bear fingers look like human being fingers when they're defleshed. But he was able to identify those two different other series of bones and eliminate the possibility that it was a crime scene. We also use, and we call these subject matter experts, and that put us in the right direction. We also used, as far as the primatologist consultation with Dr. Craig Sanford from Stanford University. He's the premier primatologist in the world. He had just got back from Tanzania, and we asked him specifically about the dental impressions for the rear teeth and the premolars, and he said specifically, and the evidence, the other peer-reviewed published science also confirmed this, that they were round premolar impressions, and that higher level human beings or Homo sapien hybrid hominin were triangular, also triangular. He also said they don't snap bones off the spinal columns, they gnaw them off, and he also said they don't bone stack. So again, we were looking to eliminate the possibility of the Gigantopithecus as being the theory, and the possibility that there could be some kind of crossover hybridization between the two. And that's not only that, but when we examined the evidence after it was all classified and microscopically measured, we compared it category for category by already world-class peer-reviewed science that had been published in the top archaeological journals in the world. So we use on-the-ground subject matter experts and scientific experts point by point to examine each type of evidence profile that we had to make sure that they all lined up. So imagine a large amount of information, and then as you examine it and bring in experts, it gets your interpretation gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And by the time you write your scientific papers, you've got a really good idea what you're looking at. And then you compare it in a literature review, which is the already peer-reviewed and published world-class science from the top scientists in the world, which proved my case. So again, I want to tell your listeners, don't take my word for it. Take the word of these subject matter experts and already peer-reviewed published science. And so I was able to prove my case by using their science word for word.
I know they the Fish and Game, whatever entity it is, whatever state it be, for deer, that's one thing, but for elk, because elk is, a little more rare than the deer, that, they usually take a head count, don't they? These conservation officers, they kind of keep an idea of what the population is when it comes to elk, don't they?
Absolutely, especially in Washington State. We've got a problem with hoof rot. And so there's several major herds, specifically in western Washington. They keep a really tight, I would say, a cordon around these animals. They know about how many hunting kills there are. They cross-reference all the tag information. They mathematically account for, predation and disease and accident pretty closely. Now, if you think about archaic human beings, they followed the herds. They followed the herds around, and they picked off the young, the sick, and occasionally the big ones. There is what's called Levy's Law, and it's a theory, and it's backed up by science for Native Americans that move around to different areas of the forest to gather different types of foods at different times of the year, whether it be fish, berries, hunting, deer and elk, beaver, raccoon, etc. And so this is a pattern that the Native Americans in North America have been doing for tens of thousands of years. And one of the things that they do is follow the herds. And that gives them their largest source of caloric intake, which was meat. If you think about the population of North America, Central and South America, they followed the large caribou herds and the archaic ice age animals, specifically we call them cervidae, or deer and elk variants across the North Sea land bridge and down in through Canada into South and Central America. And so again, proof positive that they're following the herds. So if Sasquatch is a hybrid hominin, and it's been interacting with Native Americans for tens of thousands of years, well, it follows it around and has learned these different food gathering strategies together along with Native Americans, and have done so successfully. So it's not out of the ordinary to think that they're continuing to follow the deer and elk herds.
Yeah.
When you had the conservation officer with you, when you pointed that out to him, did he look surprised? Like maybe like he's been looking. I mean, it's his job, it's his field. Sorry.
Right.
And I was wondering,
because I didn't want him to see the other information, including the footprints. What I did is when I collected the materials, I showed him a few pictures of the documented site, the distribution of the bones, and then allowed him to examine the different ribs and the spinal column, including the teeth marks. And between he was examining the actual surviving bones, how they were broke off the spinal column, and pictures and videographic evidence of the kill sites and the distribution of the bones. See, there's another point there, is that different animals scatter bones or kill animals and eat the organisms, whether it be the organs or the meat, in a specific sequence. And we can tell by how an animal was killed, how it's chewed up, and how it degenerates, what animal killed it, and what scavengers are taking advantage of the extra protein.
Yep.
And so, again, he knew exactly what we were looking at. He knew what to eliminate. And by looking at the teeth marks, he knew exactly that they weren't any of the other animals in that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I don't know why there's human teeth mark on it, but based on the bone stacking, the distribution of the bone field itself, it was in a conical shape. The animals themselves didn't have any gunshots or any fire damage or saw damage or any knife wounds or any, residual tool marks, we call them. He said he felt very, very confident that it was some kind of Homo sapien behavior, but he couldn't explain it.
Right. I wanted to say thank you for coming on the show there, Mitchell, I should say. And I know you said you only had an hour to go. Looks like your hour's up. And hopefully you'll come back on the show again soon with some more evidence, and very impelling. I mean, to me, it's just mouth-dropping.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Snake.
Okay. I'm a paranormal investigator, and I had a question for you. You were talking about portals and all that last week.
Right.
Okay. Now, I brought this up to the group before, but what's your take on using EMF detectors to try to find the electromagnetic fields that these portals would put off?
Use the radio for that.
Interesting question. I'll give you guys an extra 15 minutes because I think this is important. This is the next stage of my research. I've got pictures of actual Bigfoots coming through portals on full motion HD video. I've also have the pictures of them coming through and solidifying on the ground from 5 to 10 feet away. I've also got HD pictures and full motion video of orbs on the ground, different shapes and sizes, coordinating with something in the sky, and open what could be described as a gateway, a portal, or in my case, I call it a sky gate. So I've got photographic and videographic evidence of all of that from 2015 all the way up through 2019. So I'm able to prove that beyond any shadow of a doubt. Now the question is, how do we frame that scientifically? And that's one of the things that I'm working on now, is not only proving that Bigfoots come through these sky gates, and the sky gates actually exist, or if you want to call them portals or whatever you want to call them, I'm able to do that now. I've got the documentary evidence, and the question is I haven't written any papers on it because I'm still working on the theories, but there's several theories that are already established in quantum physics that allow us to say conclusively that there is a quantum transportation system. It's called quantum photon tunneling transportation. And very simply, an example, quantum energy is generated by the sun, and light and particulate matter at its smallest amount behaves in the same manner. If you're in a dark room and the sun's out, the rays of the sun, or the heat structures of the sun, actually migrate through solids, in that case the wall, to heat the inside of the room even though it's dark. So that's called quantum photon teleportation. So very simply, that the heat that the sun is generating, which is the largest generator of quantum energy in the universe, is able to move solids and light through solids, other solids, and heat a room. They're already using light to move spaceships. NASA's already doing that. We also are using quantum energy communications, light, to communicate with the International Space Station already. And so there's several theories on how we're using light to propel spaceships. It's called quantum light propulsion theory. Very simply, it's using these wave-like properties in order to move solids, in this case spaceships, through space. We also have teleportation, and I just told you exactly how that's accomplished through the sun's rays into a darkened room. There's actually 3 kinds. One is through a wormhole, where your body's relocated to another place. The other one's kind of like Star Trek, Beam Me Up, where your molecules are disassembled. It's transmitted somewhere and then reassembled in the same way. For example, a television signal or a cell phone signal. you're breaking down the pictures and then you're reassembling them in your cell phone or your computer node. They can do that with solids as well. Another one is where your body is scanned or a solid is scanned and the information is transferred somewhere else, like 3D printing. Now, the question is I've been able to prove that it's actually happening. I've got pictures of a Sasquatch coming from the sky as orbs on the ground and orbs in the sky come together and emit this type of energy that opens this gateway. Now, the question is how much solidity or how solid these creatures are when they're in transit. Are there other creatures using this same transportation system? I have another theory. It's called quantum translucency spectrum. It very simply it's different levels of solid. So if you see a ghost or if someone saw a paranormal entity like a ghost, that would be a very low level of solid because you can see through them. But in the case of a Sasquatch, as they move through this transportation network based on quantum energy, whether they're changing and disassembling their molecules and they're reassembling on the other side of this gateway or portal, whatever you want to call it, they then become solid, so they have a higher degree because you can't see through them. So when people talk about cloaking, I think what you're easily seeing is they're disassembling their molecules to move in a different place and then reassembling them. So we now know that not only can I prove it with HD video and photographs that there actually is a skygate or a portal, that it's day or night, that Sasquatch is indeed coming through because I have pictures of it, and also that the modern scientific theories around quantum energy already that we're using for the International Space Station and moving as a propulsion fuel to move spaceships in outer space, they're already doing all of this. And so the question is, how is Sasquatch generating this ability? Is there something that is naturally occurring on this planet that they know about that's enabling them to just harness what's already here? And I say, yes, they are. Because I can
Can I say something real quick when you get a chance?
Sure.
Even Steven's kind of maybe heard me say this before, but I had my experiences up there around the PG&E area, which is our version of the electric company here in California. For whatever reasons, there's been a lot of reports around these transformer stations, and I'm not saying nothing. I'm just like, what do they do around those things? Why are they attracted to areas where the power lines are?
Why are they attracted to electrical?
Yeah,
I think that you might look at Earth energy and electromagnetic naturally occurring energy, we call them ley lines. And if you're in certain places like the top of Mount Shasta or some of the major peaks in the Himalayas, or in the case of Bigfoot City, where I met Bob Gimlin, you're looking at a higher incidence of electromagnetic energy, which is being emitted by the geologic structures in the planet themselves in those areas. And I think that you're seeing a concentration of energy, whether it be man-made or earth-made. And we see this in the ruins in Egypt and South America as well, that there may well be, think about it as a transportation highway, and that the off-ramps and on-ramps are like these megalithic structures like the pyramids, like the ruins in South America, like the top of Mount Shasta, and that we may be creating this same type of high-intensity energy for the generation of high-volt power. And so that very well may be a trigger that allows this organism, and there's other organisms as well, because I have other pictures of other creatures and other images when I sent to the Giant here on his Facebook page, other things that are using this same quantum-based transportation network. I believe this is being generated not only on this Earth, but in the entire galaxy.
Oh, yeah.
And the main generator is the sun. The sun is what's generating this energy that creates all life on this planet. And if you think about the simple nature of it being intergalactic or interdimensional transportation system, and the Earth is
Sounds
just
like
one
Stargate.
off-ramp. The Stargate, for example, then there's millions or trillions of them all over the universe. And if one has the knowledge to use them, they don't need some kind of technology.
No.
There's something else going on, and I tend to think of it as Earth
perfect-
energy, Earth magic, electromagnetic energy.
So it doesn't have to be a spiritual body to pass through a dimension.
No.
To pass from one dimension to the other.
Right. It's
And that's
not
an argument.
necessarily.
Well, that's an argument that I have with one of my investigators in Georgia, and he became a preacher, and he said you can't take a physical mass and turn it into a spiritual mass.
Why not?
You absolutely can.
My argument with him is God can do anything.
Well,
and who said that he
science
didn't
is already
give,
doing that.
Yeah, and who can say that he didn't give the Bigfoot the ability to do this? And something else
right.
you got to talk about the cloaking. And Stephen has this picture. Me and my wife went last year. We got a family of them about 2 miles from us, 2.5 miles. And we went up and walked up the fire trail about 150 yards, and a trail cuts off to the left. Well, about 30 or 40 feet beyond that, on the main trail, there's a little field. And we were standing at the turnoff for the other trail, didn't see a thing, and I just took a couple of pictures up the road.
Right.
And when we got home, there was a Bigfoot sitting on the edge of the field, sitting down. And we couldn't see him. And I came to the conclusion that they can't hide from the camera.
Well, let me give you an example. I think you're absolutely right, because our eyes only see a very small amount of the available light. And if you really want to track them in the dark and in the light, you use infrared, because they can't hide the infrared, because they're generating some kind of infrared energy in order to power this transformation system, or what people call cloaking, as they're moving back and forth. They don't have to transport themselves anywhere. They can stand in front of you and initiate a partial amount of this energy from their bodies, for example, and then that bends the light or creates a different light spectrum, but they're still generating energy. And in the case that I found, it's infrared energy. I just looked at one of my students' infrared pictures a couple days ago, and I was always able to track them through the emissions through their eyes in the dark. He showed me some infrared pictures of some vertical lines, and that he said that he saw them and then they disappeared right in front of him. However, his thermals picked it up. And so they were invisible to the naked eye, but they were still emitting infrared energy, and he was able to pick that up on his camera. So what he was able to capture was them going through the process of being more solid to being less solid. And that's part of the quantum energy theory. It's just translucency. You can see through them, or you can't see through them. And it's just part of the process that they go through, one, to start to disassemble their molecules so they can either bend light or become in a different spectrum, or move to a different location, wherever that is. But you're looking at parts of the same process that they're going through, or that they can go through. Now, the question is, that I've always had, is do they have some kind of advanced technology that's allowing them to do this? And I don't think so. I think this is a naturally occurring thing, that a higher level of knowledge. And I tend to believe that as an ancestor, or as a participant in this Earth experiment, that we have the same knowledge that we've in our DNA somewhere, and that through the process of modernization and the process of moving away from naturalistic environment and existence, we've lost that knowledge. there's still Eastern mystics that talk about, moving their minds over different areas and having trances and all these other things. And Native Americans talk about shape-shifting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think we're looking and talking about the same natural process that this creature has developed, has understood, and has been practicing for a long time, based upon the stories from ancient Native Americans for tens of thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of late to the picnic here.
Yeah,
So in other words, you lose it, or you use it, or you lose it.
And there's another thing. There's another thing to bring up to this too is in 2007 or 2006, I think it was 2006. I was with a group of people that came out with a video. It was called The Secret DVD Worldwide, and when it came out, it blew the lid off of everything. And now, the way The Secret is taught is anything that you put through your mind, you can put on the table. In other words, let's put it this way. Anything that you think about, you bring about. If you think about something negative, guess what? It's going to happen in your life. But if you think about something positive, it's going to happen again in your life. It's all on how you perceive the thinking and holding the pictures in your mind. That's what these Bigfoots can do. They can do this a lot better than we can.
Well, imagine yourself as a 3D printer.
Pretty much.
Wow. So what's your thought on the hypothesis of the EMF tracking them?
I think that might be another area that's could give you a lot of results, because they're generating energy, and it could be multiple types of energy. I know it's infrared for sure, based upon the pictures and video imagery that I've been able to collect from my students, as well as me tracking them with a game finder, which is just a down pilot or a hunting type of handheld instrument that allows to pick up body heat or thermal vision, EMF, and the possibility that it also is sensitive to their manifestations or their changes in their energy, whether it be light, vibration, molecular energy. I think there's potentially a number of different types of instruments that one could use. I know infrared works for sure, so it's not out of the possibility that EMF detectors that people use for paranormal tracking could also produce results.
What about full spectrum cameras?
Even a full spectrum camera has limitations. However, I'm a firm believer in trying all different types of technology in order to see what generates results. If you think about this, one type of technique or one technology is not going to give you the full picture. You're just going to get a snapshot of that particular area. And so if you use a wide array of not only your eyes, your hearing, your thoughts, your feelings, different technologies, infrared, EMF, full spectrum cameras, thermal flare, all of those together, again, start to develop a profile of what we're looking at. And that's what's so important, and that's why this thing is so fractured, is because people focus on one specific area, like footprints, or like thermal.
You got to go with an open mind.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You have to have a completely open mind and willing to collect all this data. And this is the problem. Nobody wants to communicate with each other. Nobody wants to share their data. If they did, we would have a huge database way beyond BFRO that gave us what was going on, and then we could do some data crunching and really start to develop a profile of what it is what it is it does, how long it's been here, how it communicates, and these paranormal aspects of it too, the cloaking, the sky gates, the portals, the moving back and forth. And I've looked at two of the areas, the forensic dental science, the forensic science, and also the quantum energy science, and I can prove both of them. The reason I haven't published any papers on the paranormal side is because it's hard enough trying to convince people with hard published peer-reviewed science. But if I give them theories that are very complicated and complex, although they're already peer-reviewed published science, it's a lot harder for people to accept that, because then we start getting into religion and God and all of these other aspects, and people immediately shut that off. It's hard enough to convince people that Bigfoot exists, and so it's like one step at a time here, people. Let's establish it. Let's determine what it is. Once we chew on that for a little while, and then we can start talking about what its paranormal abilities are.
Yep. And here's one other thing I got to say before I close the show out. You just remember what Jesus Christ said a long time ago, and I ain't talking about religion. He told it to Nicodemus. He said, how is it something about you can't see God, but yet you can see the wind, you can see the air. Sit back and ponder that one.
Right.
You know,
and again,
I think I'm... Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna be going out to do an investigation with my daughter, and I'm gonna try the EMF and the full spectrum cameras and stuff like that. See what I get.
Sure.
Well, make sure you don't hold it towards yourself.
I would suggest that you clear your mind, and that you project your thoughts, and you project that you're not a threat. And that you just sit for a little while in the forest and become, and this sounds kind of corny, become one with your environment. Listen to what you're hearing, smell the breeze, and feel yourself part of that environment, and you'll be surprised what happens.
In other words, become a part of nature.
Exactly.
He said it, probably the best way to go out looking for Bigfoot, and this is quoted from Giant's mouth, go out there with an open heart, open mind, like you're, and with the intention like you're going to go visit an old relative.
They are our relatives.
You're just there to study.
Actually,
I fully believe they can see our auras, and they can tell if we're bad or we're good.
Yeah, they're
we're gonna harm them.
Yeah, they're your forest Santa Claus. So just watch out. They know when you're good or bad.
That's a great note to end the show.
Yeah, really. And you don't want to be bad.
No.
But no, I mean, I go out with a gun on my side all the time. And we see them. I've seen them in Georgia. I've seen them in Tennessee. I've seen them here in Florida. I've seen them in Arizona. And I always had a gun on. They know that I'm not there to harm them with it. It's not for them. It's for all the other bad things that are there that can kill you.
Yeah.
Right. So wait a minute. Giant's trying to say it's like Santa Squatch?
It could be. It knows when you're good or when you're bad.
All right. I just wanted to thank everybody. I got to get going, but I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to just talk to you guys for a couple nights, and just, let people know that it does exist. It's a hybrid hominin. It has to eat. It has children. It has a language. Yep. And now we need to move beyond that and start to find ways to interact in a non-threatening manner. And
try to communicate with them.
Exactly. I totally 100% agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Oh man,
thank you, Mitchell.
I'll share the info when I do the. Share the info when I do the EMF stuff.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Gentle Giant, and this is the Bigfoot Radio for this week. And we would like you all to tune in next week for some more Bigfoot Radio. And all of us on the Bigfoot Radio Network. We would also like to thank our guests for joining in on the discussion tonight on this talk show. And we would also like to thank you, our listeners, for sharing our adventures with us. Join us again next Friday evening for another exciting teams from across the country. And we would also especially like to thank our listeners. Until then, this is the Gentle Giant saying good night, be good, be safe, and we will see you here again next week. Until then, keep Bigfoot alive and keep Bigfooting. See you all again next week. Bye-bye, and have a nice night.
Good night, cowboy.
This session is no longer being recorded.
So I enjoyed that. So my hypothesis about the EMF was pretty plausible then, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's everybody else